Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton, and today is the 27th of March, 2018, and it is now 1 minute after 11. I'm just going to make a brief sound test because I have been sabotaged earlier. Okay, so it seems to be fine. So today I'm going live, and I've just seen I had to already remove 2 trolls. It's absolutely amazing. I haven't even gone online, and already I received abuse from the intelligence agencies. Today I couldn't care less because I have a very big announcement to make. There has been a murder attempt on my father today. I have just received a phone call from home about an hour ago that my father collapsed and has been taken to hospital. Now, I would be extremely shocked and just afraid and shocked on any other day. But this time I'm shocked and I'm extremely angry. And I'm angry at the BND, that's German intelligence. I'm angry at MI6, and I'm angry at the Swiss intelligence agency, NDB, because all 3 of them are involved in the systematic mutilation and abuse of my family. And the reason why I'm extremely furious, and I know for sure that MI6, BND, and NDB are involved, is because the attack on my father has been announced to me 3 days ahead of time with the technology that is called image to skull. So most people by now who have their heads screwed on and know how to Google, they have found out that an ancient technology called voice to skull exists, and it can be delivered by many means. For example, microwave hearing, just having an actual microwave beamed into our heads. But it's most often when you want to have high def sound, I think it's being delivered by chips that are implanted in people left, right, and center. I would estimate that about 30% of the population is already implanted, and I've got scientific documentation that hints at that. So a lot of us are implanted, and this is how it's done. Now, image to skull is pretty much like voice to skull. It's just that they don't send audio, they send video. And a lot of people who have been attacked by the intelligence agencies recognize that as the high definition movies that are played when you close your eyes. And that is really, it feels and looks like a high definition VR, virtual reality movie, because that's what it is. Now, in this case, I was shown a film of my father doing sports and then collapsing, and then getting the message that this was because he had a heart attack and that he's going to die. Now, what timing? What timing? I mean, I have been attacked several times with this technology of image or video to skull, movie to skull, whatever you want to call it. And this time, exactly 3 days after that, my father actually does collapse in time for Easter to really screw up the family Easter. Now, first of all, the timing is highly odd, but also the 3 days, that's a typical, nauseatingly typical signature of the cartel, and to be precise, MI6 and Intel in general. And that is because it was exactly 3 days before the first open assassination attempt on me. That was when I was going to the High Court in 2016, trying to get an emergency injunction against British Intel. I received a death threat traveling to the High Court in London, and 3 days later, I almost died on the motorway when I was machine gunned in the head with directed energy weapons so hard, I almost crashed into the wall of a tunnel, traveling at 100 kilometers per hour. So we had all that, and you can look up the speeches by Dr. Ronnie Kilder, who also refers to the 3-day interval that is part of cartel signaling and that the secret services love. It's one of the things that they just have to do as part of their habitual wanking. Otherwise, an assassination attempt just doesn't feel right. And this is what it is here again. Now, already, my mother has been attacked brutally on the 15th of January, where she was made to stand up in the middle of the night under radio hypnosis, and they dropped her body down so that she smashed her head on the side table. Of course, blood going everywhere. And not only was it highly odd, people do not fall out of bed. And when you fall out of bed, you can't quite produce that much blood when the side table is aligned with the mattress. So my mother fell from standing upright, and there was no reason, and she had no recollection of standing up. My father found her literally bleeding on the floor. So that was on the 15th of January. And I think that was shortly preceded or shortly thereafter. My mother told me that she had a high definition, vivid dream of me lying in a morgue, ready for cremation. And my mother remarked on how odd it was. And she said, oh my God, I could actually see you. I could touch you. And I was like, yeah, I bet you could. I know the tech. I've seen it. Yes. That sort of bullshit is what and my family and I are being attacked with. Now, I had a family meeting just a few weeks ago where German intel, the division is murky. I mean, they're all part of the same crime corporation. They're all part of the Vatican Crown Corporation. They're not part of our national institution. So the question is, how can you tell when are you attacked by MI6 and the BND and NDB? Frankly, I lost track a long time ago. And the bottom line is it doesn't pissing matter. So these days, I just draw the national boundary lines. If something unfortunate happens to me in Germany, it must have been the BND. If it's in Switzerland, it's NDB. And if it's in Britain, it's MI5, and MI6 is involved all along for many, many reasons that will appear in my court case. So this is the division that I'm taking, and I think it also makes sense for court cases. But just to explain the story, it was just a few weeks ago when we had a big family get-together that was very, very happy. And what German intel / MI6 tried to do is make me fall down a very, very steep, very long staircase by either sending a pulse into my knees or by triggering the many chips I have in my knees, and literally my muscles gave way. But my muscles gave way moments after they subliminally messaged me that my muscles are going to give way. So, you get a threatening message whereby suddenly you have this, a foreign thought that interrupts everything you were thinking, saying, hey, you're going to fall down the stairs. And then moments later, without you being able to help yourself, because I watched the stairs, when you get a message like that, you really watch how you're walking down the stairs. And I was carrying a heavy suitcase with all my computing equipment with me because I have to. If I leave it at home, they break in and they destroy stuff. So imagine you're focusing on how you're walking down and suddenly your knees give way in a way you can't control because the electric pulse has been sent to your knee to bend your knee, and you just collapse. And I almost fell down the stairs. I dropped the suitcase, which went down about 5 meters. And, by pure chance, all of my computing equipment stayed intact. And by even bigger chance, I stayed totally intact. And I just ended up being slightly more pissed off than I was otherwise. So that's the shit I'm dealing with day in, day out. And I have to say, the attack on my father mirrors 1-to-1 also the attack on Melanie Richard's father. And Melanie Richard's father had a heart attack. Let's do the inverted commas by Dr. Evil. The heart attack that Melanie Richard had him in the hospital literally a day or two before the big scanning event we had in Brussels for the non-consensual body implants. And the doctors actually told him that he's very likely to die and he's in danger, and all these involved and very, very expensive medical tests had to be done to make sure he stays alive. And guess what? The scanning just passed. Melanie and I did the scanning. We cared a lot about Melanie's father, but we went away anyway. And then lo and behold, as soon as the scanning was, over, Melanie's father miraculously healed. And the word miraculous is not of my choosing. That's what was used by the doctors. They said, they have never seen something like that before. He was gravely ill and almost died, and now he's completely healthy again, as if nothing had happened. What a miracle, they said. Well, it's not so much a miracle as the after effect of a directed energy weapon. And I'm 100% sure that this is what was used again here. So I already know that my hometown is entirely infested with neo-Nazis because they have attacked me. German intel attacked me brutally, absolutely insanely brutally. Christmas of 2016, that was the first Christmas. And then they attacked me even more brutally, Christmas 2017. And I've, roughly Pi mal Daumen, that's the German expression. I've worked out where these weapons are. And I also am pretty confident that the next door neighbor who moved in after the old lady who used to live there had a minor accident and then, very quickly deteriorated and died. So I think that person is a BND agent. I think she's also a psychopathic serial killer. I really think so, because she tried to kill me. I think the energy shots seem to come from her home. So based on that, I assume that, she works with them, and a lot of trouble started as soon as she moved in. The other side, which is a semi-detached, and the other sharing partners, the woman there started complaining about, guess this, light flashes when she closes her eyes at night, weird vibrations all of her body, and this sensation that, she's being attacked electromagnetically. Yes, well, we know the cause. That is a classical sign of intel interference. So the bottom line is Melanie's father was almost killed when we did the body scanning last May, and he was miraculously healed. And now my mother was attacked, and she could have had a severe brain injury that day when they literally made her collapse. And this particular thing of making you stand up under radio hypnosis and then knocking you flat out so that you collapse standing fully upright, but no protection. So when you just faint, there's actually your muscles still kind of are tense, and your arms will do some sort of protective movement. But when you're knocked flat out standing by one of these electromagnetic weapons, you will just drop dead. Not drop dead, but drop down like a stone, and perhaps even drop dead if they get the energy wrong, and that's what they did with my mother. So the injuries she had were absolutely horrific. And that was again timed when she just the day before we were celebrating that she'd finished her job, and we had a wonderful celebratory time. And then literally just an hour or two after going to bed, she has this horrific accident, with blood absolutely everywhere. So that's the psychopathic wank shit that, our modern intelligence agencies engage in. And it's the same shit like over and over and over and over again, because the truth is, these people are totally psychopathic, and the only thing that they're capable of is fucking and killing. They're basically reduced to the Neanderthal survival genes, fucking and killing. That's all you need to survive and make it to the 21st century, it seems. And that's exactly what these people are doing professionally, fucking and killing, and sometimes fucking and killing at the same time, as in ritual sacrifice of children, mostly. So there we are. However, I've got a couple of announcements to make, because I think this will have repercussions. This I take very, very seriously, and the actual line of attack is clear, because I'm about to ramp up the writing up of my court case. And I think the idea is that, now there's big upheaval. Well, if I must, I'll take the laptop to the hospital and I'll sit next to my father literally until he gets better. But this is absolutely ridiculous what has happened. And, I swear, I really swear by everything I hold dear, that I will bring these fuckers down. Not just to what they did to my family, but to what they're continuing to do to thousands of good families, because these people are scum. The entirety of MI6 and MI5 and the BND and the NDB, they are the lowest proletarian degenerate scum that you can just imagine. Okay, they're absolutely the worst of the worst. They have lied to us for centuries, if not millennia. The entire spying profession is just about deception. And I just recently posted that document that was leaked by Edward Snowden a long time ago. That was a GCHQ training manual. And if you go through that, I'll upload it to my channel shortly, you will see how actually psychopathy is called a core skill. It's a skill set. Well, no, psychopathy is brain damage, people. Okay, it gives you a short-term advantage, but in the long term, it's actually a massive disability for the entire fucking planet. Okay, so Anyway, the announcements I've got to make now that we're talking about attacks on family and attempted murder, I would like to announce that my grandparents were both murdered in Germany. Okay, my grandparents were murdered. I'm now 100% sure of this. My grandparents were murdered in 2008 and 2010 in Germany. Okay, my grandfather specifically, my grandmother died at home. Get this, she died on the 8th of 2008 at 4:30 a.m. Okay, my grandfather died on the 8th, 2010, also at 4:30 a.m. in my presence in the hospital Baden-Baden. All right. So I was actually with my grandfather for the last, get this, 3 days and nights, 3 days, 3 nights, 33. Okay. And then after the third night, he actually died. All right. He died in my presence. The hospital at the time, I thought, was oh so kind to give us an entire room where it was just my grandfather and I. And they gave me a hospital bed so I can stay with my grandfather. And I actually assumed, oh my goodness, there are still some good hospitals left. And that is just what they do, how very respectful of them. But now I realized that was bollocks. No, the reason why I got a hospital bed to actually care for my grandfather during the last 3 days of his life was because I now know that I had brain chips all along, and they were actually reading out my brain chips because they wanted to measure what grieving is like my brain waves for grieving. Okay. And I remember, and as I was writing up my court case, these things started coming back to me, and now I know everything about this technology. Suddenly I thought, oh, that's what was happening all along. Yes. So what was happening all along is I was with my grandfather as he was lying there, dying in the hospital Baden-Baden, which I think was entirely artificial. This entire illness overcame him very quickly, and he died very, very suddenly. Okay, after having been stable and perfectly healthy and perfectly all right. And that he just happened to die on precisely the same day out of 365, at precisely the same minute, right? So 4:30, knock on the clock is a bit, right? So, yes, that was an intel job. My grandfather was murdered. So German intelligence has a double murder on their hands, okay? And they also attacked Melanie's father. They now attacked my father, timed after image to skull. It just doesn't look good. Okay. So basically, I would like to announce that I'm keeping my family and the details of my family otherwise private for their protection. But I would like to announce this for sure. So please, 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 record this and make a backup copy of this. And, everything I said in the very beginning, the very first video I made was under oath. Everything I say is pretty much under oath, right? It continues to be so. And actually, maybe I even have the oath up here somewhere knocking around. If so, I'll repeat everything I said under oath, because one of the things I want you all to do, one of the things I want you all to do is to learn how to leave a testimony and to actually start using testimonies to assist each other. Because basically these people want us dead. They want to murder us in series. And the only way we can actually get around that is if we, gang up and we actually learn how to quote each other. So let me just find it. Actually, now that I have this idea, it must be somewhere here, because I remember seeing it. Hang on. I'm going through all the videos, all my tabs. Oh, here it is. Okay. So the entire thing, hang on, can you see me? Okay. So I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So I repeat, my grandfather was murdered at hospital Baden-Baden. My grandmother was murdered in her home, also in Baden-Württemberg. And the reason why I'm 100% sure that they were both murdered is, first of all, because my grandmother died at the very symbolic day and time, which was the 8th of 2008 at 4:30 a.m. And my grandfather died on the 8th, 2010, also at 4:30 a.m. My grandfather in my presence. Now, what was so strange about me being at that hospital, Baden-Baden, which I now am 100% sure that is actually an Intel-driven, Illuminati-driven fucking mafia outfit, okay, like most hospitals seem to be these days, including Hospital Erasmus in Brussels that kidnapped the daughter of Melanie, the newborn baby. What makes me think that that was murder, the case of my grandfather, is not just the date. It's the fact that I was given a double room. I was with my grandfather throughout the 3 days and 3 nights, again, 33, the Masonic fucking 33 cartel signaling. But also because now that I was writing up my court case, I remembered that one of the little details that at the time I thought was highly odd, but now I understand fully, is that in the mornings I would stay at night with my grandfather and I would just, watch over him, and eventually I would fall asleep. And then when I would wake up, sometimes I would sleep for very, very little time, 3 or 4 hours, and then I would be up again. And what I remember distinctly, that after I fell asleep, I would wake up and I would literally think, hang on, do I have a sunburn on my skull? On my scalp, on the top of my head, because I haven't been outdoors, but my skin feels burned as if I had a sunburn. Yeah, well, guess what that is? That's a fucking microwave beam on the other side of the wall. Okay. So these people gave me a hospital bed. We were both lying, my grandfather in his bed, me caring for him, and they gave me the second bed in that room, right? Both with our heads towards the next door room. And guess what was in there? A fucking microwave weapon. Or perhaps these days they even build them into the wall. But anyway, I stayed there 3 nights, and every single day I thought, hang on, my sunburn is getting worse and I haven't left the fucking hospital. How can this be? I mean, it was in August, right? So the first time I thought, was I outside? And I thought, no, hang on. I just drove all the way from Geneva to Baden-Baden because we were at Lucerne at the time. So I drove when I heard that my grandfather was really poorly, and I spoke to him on the phone, and I heard that he was, he barely coped. I got straight into the car and I drove there straight. That's a lot of hours of driving, not much time out in the sun. And nevertheless, I ended up with a sunburn on the top of my head. So no, what it was a microwave beam. So what they did is they set me up to be next to my grandfather so that they can monitor my brain waves as I was grieving, as I was really upset, because that's exactly what this whole MK Ultra bullshit is about, okay? They want to have your pain. What do you feel and think when you're in pain? Because that's all what MK Ultra is about, okay? So these Intel guys and the entire fucking cartel has been only taught one thing, which came out of the Nazi experiments, is how to do, artificial learning and external influence through whatever it's called, like negative conditioning, okay? It's bollocks. The reason why they use negative conditioning, okay, it's for evolutionary reasons, because for evolutionary reasons, we remember negative, and we have to remember negative things much more strongly than positive things, okay? Our synapses grow much thicker when certain hormones, certain stress hormones are present, because it means danger. We had to learn how to avoid and how to react during danger much better than what to do when we're happy, okay? And this is why MK Ultra works so well. It goes back to an evolutionary process that ended up with this sort of neurological feature, okay, that we learn negative stuff so much better than positive stuff. And this is why people can get depressed. This is what the entire crime cartel, is about. It's that little asymmetry between the synapse thickness, between, how you learn positive and negative stuff. So teaching probably an AI algorithm what my brain waves were like when I was really sad must have been worth fucking millions. And at this point, I can confirm that Hospital Baden-Baden, okay, that's the big university hospital in Baden-Baden, is involved in this shit. It was involved in 2010. I was there. They did that to me. It was the entire thing was a setup, and my grandfather was murdered because the probability of you dying exactly on the 8th of the 8th, exactly the same minute as your wife, is essentially zero. Okay. Unless you were killed. Unless you were fucking killed. And the other thing I would like to record at this point for posterity is that his lungs were absolutely filled with water. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not a medic. I'm not sure if that's normal, but that was pretty strange. Okay. And it was in fact so strange that I was still there. I was collecting his belongings when the nurses came in to basically get him ready, you know, after he passed away. And at some point, they just moved his body sideways, and his body toppled over, and out of his lungs poured clean fluid, water, liters of water. Okay, not out of his stomach, out of his lungs. Okay, it was not stomach liquid. It absolutely wasn't. It didn't smell like it. It was a clear liquid. Now, somebody explained to me how that can happen. But one of the things that I distinctly remember happens to a lot of victims, that is, directed energy weapons have this ability to make your tissue retain a lot of water. Okay, if you look at the x-rays of Millicent's leg, if you go to stop 007, okay, let me show you now, because this stuff is really important and really serious. So let me just share my screen and show you some stuff you really need to know about in this absolutely nuts world of intel, you know, hit jobs. Okay, so where are we here? Let me share my screen and show you something, because I think this entire water thing is important. So if you go to stop007.org, okay, this is my website. There are some spoof sites, but this is it. Go to support our fighters, and here you will find my team, Dr. Millicent Black, okay? Now, Dr. Millicent Black pointed out to me that she's being attacked by this psychopathic serial killer, Randall Webster, was an Air Force veteran with SEER torture training. Okay, you can read all about it here. But Dr. Black pointed me to her x-rays. Now, on her x-rays, you can see two things. Number one, here, the chips that have been implanted in her body by Randall Webster. And the second thing is you can see how directed energy weapons can explode away or carve out bone. So this is an x-ray taken of her thigh bone in 2014. And down here is an x-ray of her thigh bone taken in 2016. And you can see a huge chunk missing. There's bone missing. And suddenly the knee replacement doesn't fit anymore because there's bone missing. But the other thing you can see is this white milky shade. And the milky shade is the thickness of Dr. Black's thigh. And especially the upper thigh is swollen like you wouldn't believe. If you compare the two images, the thickness of her thigh, it is massive. And the point is that this effect of directed energy weapons, there's many, many, many ways how you can change the water content of a body. Okay, you can perhaps damage tissue walls and so on, but also you can affect with electromagnetic weapons. You can affect the chemistry. All right, you can affect the salt content of cells. Okay, so if you can change the salt barrier, if you can make the cell walls, you know, more permeable for water, and it's a very, very complex stuff, right? You can actually make cells just collect more and more water, so your tissue will swell up. By the way, there's also many other ways they can do it with drugs. If you ever had a really cheap chicken, okay, from the supermarket, one of the things that you notice when you start cooking the chicken, if it's you know, not a natural chicken, is just the amount of water that comes out. If you're cooking it in oil, it will start, you know, hot water will start splashing the oil absolutely everywhere. Now, that is artificial water retained in the body to make the chicken heavier and to sell you less meat for, you know, more money. So this is, I believe, done with drugs, you know, that's given to the chicken, but there are many, many, many ways you can do that. And with humans who are under direct energy weapon attack, I think it can also be done just with the directed energy weapons, So many, many ways. You can affect the brain, you can affect the way hormones are produced, affect the salt content of cells, and it's literally endless. But the damage can be done. And when Millicent was operated on after the directed energy weapon damage on her bone, by Randall Webster, I would like to emphasize, who's running, and by his own admission, training up teams, his boys, his death squad teams on the body of Millicent. The doctors operating on Millicent said that they were amazed how much water was in her tissue. Okay, so there's something about directed energy weapons and water in a human body. Okay, water, not stomach acid, water, clean water. Now, unfortunately, I'm a physicist, not a medic, so I don't know what this means, that my grandfather's lungs were so filled with water, he might have literally suffocated on water. I don't know. He might have literally been drowned in his own lungs. I have no idea what happened, but this was extremely odd. And it was so odd that these two nurses who actually used to dealing with, dead bodies actually looked shocked, and they kind of, looked over to me like, oh my God, what's this? I was like, hey, I don't know. You killed my grandfather, I should have said. But anyway, the telltale sign is, first of all, the date, the 8th of the 8th in both cases. My grandmother's death, highly symbolic, on the 8th of the 8th of the 8th. In fact, 3 weeks before my wedding. Okay, my grandmother really wanted to be there for my wedding, and she died just weeks before. Now that, again, 3 weeks, right? I mean, the plot is thickening. 3 weeks on the 8th of the 8th, 2008, and then my grandfather dying on the 8th of the 8th, 2 years later exactly, also at 4:30 a.m. So that is, highly odd. Then the microwave burn, I would say, the sun burn, the microwave burn on the top of my skull, but it doesn't actually stop there, because so I was with my grandfather, and then, I saw that he was passing away. So I was with him until he died. And then when he passed away, at some point your tears are just flowing, and you think, you realize he's died. And just by habit, even though he was dead, I was averting my eyes. And as soon as I averted my eyes, my gaze went through the window. And I remember that, because that moment, 2 black ravens landed on the tree. And when you're grieving that hard, any thought of life or animal form, your eyes just get drawn to it, okay? So I was looking at the 2 ravens thinking, they appeared exactly the moment I turned my head. Now, the thing about the 2 ravens is that these 2 ravens stayed, I think, when did I leave the hospital? I called my uncle, I think, at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I must have left the hospital at 6:30, 6:30 or 7 a.m. But it was 2 hours, and for those 2 hours, the ravens sat up in the tree. Now, during the middle of the day, ravens usually take off eventually. If you've ever watched ravens, they don't hang around for longer than maybe 10, 15 minutes. So for ravens to hang out there for an entire solid 2 hours, bobbing up and down in the tree, is highly unusual. And because I'd made this immediate connection with the grieving, I mean, you notice everything when you're, highly emotionally worked, I glanced over to the ravens. So at some point, I stood by the window and I just watched them. And I thought, I'm going to watch them until they take off. And I watched them. And every once in a while, one of them would flap their wings and then settle again. And then eventually flap their wings as if they were about to take off and then settle down again. I thought, now that's really highly odd. But at the time, I had no idea about intel, their brain control bullcrap, and all this shit. Okay. And then what happens is I pack up my grandfather's belongings, I say goodbye to him, and I leave the hospital to actually join my family. And as soon as, I say goodbye to my grandfather, I walk and I look at him, and then my gaze looks out of the window. And that moment, I've opened the door and I'm about to leave. The 2 ravens take off. The very moment I open the door, the two ravens take off opposite the hospital in the tree. Now, if that wasn't odd enough, I got into the car, the two ravens landed on a tree in the parking lot. And then when I took off, these two ravens, I'm not sure if the two ravens actually followed the car, to be honest, because I saw that the two ravens took off when I drove out of the parking lot. But then, frankly, I lost track of the ravens. I thought they'd taken off. So ravens being pretty black, I'm not sure if it was the same ravens, but as I was arriving literally in the town where my uncle lives, on the roundabout before their home, I actually, no, sorry, it wasn't the roundabout. It was the car, the street leading up to it. I was driving along and suddenly two ravens landed in front of my car in the middle of the road. So then you see that, of course, you slow down and you stop and you watch it and you think, what's going on today? Okay, what's going on today? So I just waited. These birds were just marching up and down. And then at some point, you know, they just took off. And this was really close to my uncle's house. So I thought, okay, right. Fortunately, I don't have a single superstitious bone in my body. I just thought, WTF, you know, what a day. But then curiously, you know, as these things are happening, as I was listening to victim stories, as I heard about numerology and the Illuminati's obsession with things, you know, 888 and 666 and 555 and 777, all this shit. Okay, I suddenly thought, it suddenly all starts making sense. Okay. Now, the thing about the ravens is something that I figured out very quickly when I spoke to Philip Kerr, because if you Google, and let's do that together, if you Google Philip Kerr versus MI5, all right, let's do that now together. You do it, I do it. See what we get. Philip Kerr versus MI5. You should go, you should get the page of Philip Kerr. Let me show you what you should get in case, you know, the internet is so sabotaged. So Philip Kerr versus MI5, all right. So Philip Kerr, businessman, claims that he was harassed by MI5 for well over a decade. Okay, that's Andrew Parker, head of MI5, and that is Philip Kerr. Now, Philip Kerr was harassed by them in Wales and in everywhere in Britain and in Thailand. But also Philip Kerr, and it says it somewhere here. Is it under blog maybe? At some point, he talks about the ravens. Yes, here it is. Who says MI5 couldn't use a trained rook or crow to harass a target? And what Philip Kerr reports here, and I ask you to read this entire fucking thing, you know, of the insanity that MI5 is capable of, and also, very importantly, of the utter uselessness of the fraudulent investigatory powers tribunal, that in the end, this is under litigation history, settled the entire thing with a non-determination judgment, okay, here on the 12th of July 2016. The IPT communicated in a letter that it could make no determination in favor of Mr. Kerr in response to either Mr. Kerr's T1 human rights claim or his original T2 harassment claim or complaint. A non-determination letter. Now, this is all bullshit, okay? The Investigatory Powers Tribunal is a secretive court in the UK in charge of policing the intel agencies, or rather not policing it, okay? And after long litigation history, they did jack shit, as you would expect. But anyway, the IPT is a total fraud, and I've got the paper on my website proving that using systems analysis. But anyway, what I want to talk about today is the crows, okay? So the reason why Philip Kerr is mentioning crows here on his page, you know, rooks versus crooks, is that he was harassed by trained crows that were knocking against his window in the middle of the night, okay? So I went to the court case of Philip Kerr, and I spoke to Philip Kerr and his partner, Debbie, when they had their court hearing at the IPT on the 20th of January 2016. Was it the 21st? No, it was the 20th. And what's so interesting about the Crow saga is that the entire thing unfolded. So when I think Philip Kerr refused to work as an informant for MI5 and to be a snitch on his best friend. Okay. And because he refused, MI5 started stalking him Stasi style. He started suffering break-ins and sabotage, and they put dead rats in his path and yada, 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 the usual spiel, you know, MI5 manual page 200 to 250. So, and then eventually, Philip Kerr and his partner were woken up in the middle of the night because a shadowy figure was banging against their window, you know. And Debbie said it was frightening because you hear this loud bang and it sounds like a burglar is going to smash the window in. And then when Philip Kerr got up and looked at the window, the person was gone. But they saw a black shadowy figure, like a head. And then with time, they figured out, oh, hang on, no, these are blackbirds, okay? And these are trained blackbirds that would come in the middle of the night to frighten them. It's how very, very interesting, right? Okay. Now, if that was not enough, the entire thing repeated in Wales, okay? And in Wales, in Thailand, one of the two properties Philip Kerr had, he actually looked at the windowsill when this happened the first time in the other property. And he realized that even though this had happened only once, there were hundreds and hundreds of claw marks on the wooden windowsill and hundreds of little chips in the window where beaks had actually picked away at the glass. And then he realized, hang on, these birds were trained. When I'm not there, they are training them like mad to be able to pull it off once at night. Okay, these were trained birds. And he spoke to an animal trainer and he told him, oh yeah, it's done with whistles and birds can hear them and, you know, we can't. And then you train them so that they get a reward if they do something. And bit by bit, you get them onto, you know, knocking at the window on command. And on the website of Philip Kerr that I showed you, there's a little video showing you what these crows are capable of with just a little bit of reward and training, you know. I mean, much better than most MI5 trainees, to be honest with you. But anyway, so this is the story with the crows. So it's pretty clear that crows have been trained for a very long time. And when I heard, at first, I didn't even remember the crows, you know, from the death of my grandfather. When I heard the story, from Philip, and Debbie said, you know what's so strange? These blackbirds, these huge black birds, they're not even indigenous to Thailand. And I was like, I said, how can you describe these birds? And she said, yeah, they're like crows, but much bigger. And I thought, oh, you mean ravens, right? Like the ravens that are famously trained at the Tower of London, maybe? Those ravens? Guess where MI5 got the ravens from, hey? So, yeah, that's the story with ravens. But it's even a bit, you know, the plot thickens when you actually Google electromagnetic weapons. Let's do that together. Electromagnetic or magnetic warfare and old crows. Because you will get, if I may show you, let me share my screen, you will get to the association of old crows. Okay, let me show you. The association of old crows, if you just Google electromagnetic warfare, old crows. Now, on the Wikipedia page, it explains to you, look at the logo with the black crow. It's an international professional organization specializing in electronic warfare, tactical information operations, and associated disciplines. Headquartered in Alexandria, note the actual reference, Alexandria, Alexander the Great, in Virginia. The Virgin. Oh my God. You don't really need to look any further for any pharaonic and, Vatican links. But anyway, so here, the name Old Crows emerged from the first use of electronic warfare in World War II to disrupt access communications and radars. Allied equipment and operators were known by the code name Raven. Common jargon changed the name to Crows, and those engaged in the profession became known as Old Crows. Haha, okay. Remember electronic warfare. Now let's go to the second link on Google, okay? The Association of Old Crows, crows.org, on their own website, are all about electromagnetic weapons and radar. mode designed for airborne tactical fire control radar systems, electronic warfare capabilities, enabling technologies, cyber and electromagnetic weapons convergence conference, electronic warfare in Europe 2018. I think you get the idea, right? The Association of Old Crows, that's the logo right there. Now, let's just think for a little bit, okay, what is the possible connection between these old crows, okay, the old crows, and electronic and electromagnetic warfare? Let's just have a think. Perhaps it helps you to know that during the Second World War, when apparently all this Raven shit started, right? What, for example, the US was trying to do is to have little remote controlled dolphins. And the idea was to use them to plant, for example, mines onto ships. So they had trained dolphins to put little, like, you know, detonators with magnets and put them onto the hulls of ships and stuff like that. Okay, so those were the dolphins. Now you can train a dolphin, and you can train a dolphin even better if you're using some sort of ultrasound underwater, okay? So the dolphin can hear, like the raven can hear the whistle. Now, this was Second World War, okay? And now it occurs to me that we're in this area where the 1990s were called the decade of the brain, and it's all about the brain chips. And I have brain chips, and everybody on my team has brain chips and body chips and this chips and those chips. So it occurs to me that could it be the case that the reason why they love training crows is because perhaps the crows were the first flying animal that had electrodes in their heads that could be remote controlled with little antennas, because you probably saw the images of monkeys with electrodes sticking out. And if you had crows with electrodes sticking out, wouldn't that be perfect for surveillance? Because, you know, they fly from above a bit like a little natural drone. It's just that they don't freak people out like a drone. You would just have a little spy raven, you know, flying along, being remote controlled. And being able to be brain controlled as much as I, Millicent, or Melanie, you know, can be brain controlled. And we have experienced that when somebody externally brain hacks us, you know. Now, this is put into humans live already now. So if I know that I have this tech in me in 2018, could it be that 10 years ago it wasn't crows? Oh, hell yeah. Okay. So let's just unravel this entire nonsense. So yes, of course, you can have, you know, crows going and knocking on a window with whistles, but more importantly, you can have crows actually being remote controlled with electromagnetic waves. Okay. And I think the two crows that landed exactly the moment when my grandfather died was sent there to land there and were remote controlled. And what I saw when I watched them, and I saw them flap their wings like they would naturally take off and then settle down again, was the no command that was issued into their brain. Okay. Now, if that's not strange enough, this entire crow thing. So there's, again, clear parallels between the case of Philip Kerr versus MI5 and the case of Dr. Katherine Horton against the entirety of British fucking intelligence in the same year. Okay, we both had the crows. All right, now if that's not strange enough, I think 2 years after the death of my grandfather, I think in 2012 or 2013, I have to check, my entire family visited his grave. Okay. So we were there as a family, and again, very emotional moment, the grave of my grandparents. And I was upset at some point. And when I'm upset, I turn my head, and what do I see? I see two crows land on a tree on the side of the cemetery. And that's the point when I thought, at that time, I'd already been stalked for a very long time by MI5. I'd already been stalked by Jonathan Sumption, now Lord Sumption, for a very, very long time. And I'd cottoned on to there being something going on in my life that was MI6 related. So I'm watching those ravens. And then at the time I thought, right, I'm going to get to the bottom of this raven business. So whilst my family were talking and grieving over the grave of my grandparents, I was watching the fucking birds, okay? I was watching them like a hawk. And again, the same thing happened. These birds were there for about an hour, okay? They landed when we arrived. They took off when we took off, okay? And all throughout this time, I saw exactly the same pattern. Okay, these birds would just sit there, you know, bobbing up and down with the branches. Eventually, they would just flap their wings as if they're about to take off and then settle down. And then they would sit there for another 10, 15 minutes. The same thing would repeat. And when they were ready to fly, they would settle down. So I think my entire family was thinking I'm crying and I don't want people to see. And that's why I'm averting my head. But I was like, no, I know my grandparents. And they would have said, listen, kid, don't just, stand here crying over a stone. Get the fuckers. Get the fuckers and find out what the hell they did to us. Okay. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm telling you, this entire bullshit with the ravens, that is brain control. These birds have got fucking wires and chips in their head like I do. Okay. So anybody who gets the ravens and the animals maybe attacking you out of the blue, that's brain control. Get the animal if you can. If it's a dog, search it for body and brain implants, for chips, and stuff like that. It is really worth your money because Intel is doing something with these animals. Now, this is the connection between Philip Kerr versus MI5, Dr. Katherine Horton against British Intel, right? Both had the crows, both had all this nonsense, both had British Intel following them abroad. Okay, so in both our cases, MI6 is involved because MI6 has the networks. Okay, so my grandfather was murdered in my presence. He was actually murdered so that he would die in a timed fashion exactly 2 years after my grandmother, within a minute of her death. And then they burned my head with microwaves to find out what my brain waves and brain chips signal when I'm grieving, so that maybe they can send the brain waves back and make me suicidal or very, very sad later, and that's how they do the spontaneous, you're getting really sad sort of stuff. And then they had the ravens land there to accompany this. And guess what? When I looked up, the actual story about ravens, let me see if I can get it on Wikipedia. I think it's if you go to ravens, the Wikipedia, if I remember correctly, references, where is it? Hang on. This is all about... Okay, because there's something about the mythology of ravens on Wikipedia. Okay, and I think, yes, mythology. So you have to go to the common raven, I think. Now, at some point, I have it printed off somewhere because it's part of my evidence. I have to look at the actual search term, but it will be in my court case, no worries. So if you search around a bit about the, I can't find the exact Wikipedia page that has this on. It used to be, I think, on the Wikipedia page for ravens. But if you look, the mythology of ravens in Europe is that they represent the souls of those murdered. And this is what it said on Wikipedia. And that's when you think, a bit too much coincidence. It wasn't pigeons landing in the tree. It wasn't parrots, or whatever, finches. It was black ravens. That just so happens to represent the souls of those murdered, okay? And it was 2 ravens on both occasions, on 3 occasions. When my grandfather passed away and I was in the hospital, when I was, stopping my car for the 2 ravens, literally on the drive to my uncle's, and then in the cemetery, 2 ravens. So, it's pretty much clear, right? I mean, how much more evidence do you need? And simply, even though none of this is direct evidence, in data analysis, like in particle physics, we're looking for clusters. And when a cluster is so unlikely to appear by chance, there has to be another mechanism to bring that about, okay? And by pure chance to have all of this come together is just impossible. But then if that's not enough, add in the case of Philip Kerr with the ravens. If that's not enough, add in the fact that I had a phone call with Philip Kerr not that long ago, and I told him I'm going to take British intelligence to court yet once more, and I wanted to know the outcome of his court case. That's when I heard about the IPT non-determination clause. And I said to Philip that I, since then, had also figured out that I had the ravens as well. I had just forgotten. And that the ravens will feature in my case as well. And our cases were then, you know, getting ever more identical. And then he said, oh, it's funny that you would mention the ravens, because we spoke, and then he had he talked to two people who were close to him. And after that phone call, both of those people said that they started being harassed by ravens. So suddenly ravens featured in their life as well, which makes me think that the fact that we have got an international organization called the Association of Old Crows, to me implies that worldwide crows are being trained by these old fuckers, okay? And crows are probably like 101 in their training manual. So you probably have your trainees practice on crows, remote controlling crows for, you know, for these sort of operations, spying operations. And then we have a lot of crow training, crow brain control centers all around the country. Okay. Add to that the fact that I have a conversation with somebody in the US and I'm telling him the story about the crows. And the next day he writes to me and he says, oh, I got the crows as well. Freaky, isn't it? It's like, no, it's not freaky. It just shows you how much money Intel has been wasting for the last, you know, decades. So this is the story. And I wanted to say all this because Hospital Baden-Baden, yeah, is guilty of murder, of targeted murder on the instructions of German intelligence and MI6. Okay, at the time, Swiss Intel wasn't involved. So my grandparents were murdered by German Intel and MI6. I'm 100% sure. Okay. And at the time, I hadn't twigged that I was certainly MI5's harassment object ever since I went up to Oxford in the year 2000. Okay. And another thing that I suddenly remembered writing my case is that in the first week of arriving to Oxford, I was already stalked. I had photographs taken in my face from wanky old men. At the time, I just thought, oh, that's just Britain. It's a bit weird. And now I know, no, that's just MI5, okay? Because these wanky old tossers have accompanied me ever since, right? A bunch of pervy old dodgy geezers. Okay, that's, I think, the staple, you know, of MI5 and MI6. So this is it, basically. I wanted to put this on record. You can download it and you can write a transcript. I don't mind about the swearing. It's part of it. It's basically my signature. If there's no fuck in it, then it's probably not by me, you know. But anyway, you can quote this in court. Please do quote it in court because it's one of those cases. And everything I said is exactly the truth as I witnessed it. And I'm willing to stand up in court and repeat it. In fact, I'm going to stand up in court and repeat it. And the fact that now my father was attacked today, I think the plan is to implant my father in hospital. So we'll have some more news later on, but I'll keep a very close eye. And if I just find half a chip in my father, literally the hospital where he's at now, they will get the blame. I will bring these fuckers down. They will go onto the list of Hospital Baden-Baden, Hospital Erasmus in Brussels, and this hospital can go right next because the same program will be taken on, you know, pulled down on them as well. We will find these fuckers. And I have literally case after case after victim case of people being attacked in hospitals, okay? So I just want you all to know that this happened, and the attack on my father was announced 3 days ago by Image to Skull to me, and now it actually happened. And a virtually identical attack has happened on the father of Melanie Richan when we had the scanning in Brussels in May, all right, May of last year. And that is just what they do. And with they, as always, I mean the intelligence agencies. And one bit to add into what you need to know, also for court, if you're in Germany and you have maybe a similar case of being attacked by German Intel, if you search for, I think it's Gerhard Polly, was it Gerd Polly? I can't remember. I think it's Gerd Polly. Gerd. Anyway, he was the head of Austrian intelligence, and I think it's in Sputnik News. It's about, oh, I have to find the link. You know what? I will post it. I will post it on my website. Basically, is it Gerhard Polly? The former head of Austrian Intel, okay, said that basically it is the NSA and GCHQ that are controlling Germany. Okay, I will have to find the post. So anyway, it's a news article saying that German Intel is entirely controlled by the NSA and GCHQ. What could he possibly mean? Well, he means exactly the same what Dr. Ronnie Kilder meant when she showed that diagram about the directed energy weapon system that's being used against the civilian population. It had a little diagram with NSA, GCHQ, the MOD, you know, and MI5. So these intelligence agencies are running a massive directed energy weapon system, okay, globally. And this incorporates satellites and mobile phone towers and directed energy weapons in helicopters and at your neighbors, okay. And we already have the head of Austrian Intel, the former head of Austrian Intel, on record, quoted in the news, saying that German Intel is entirely controlled by Anglo-Saxon Intel. Okay, so you can see the hierarchy, which would make sense because Germany is still under occupation. Okay, so if we're looking for the culprits, then, you know, we need not go further than London, really. There is a way to go even further, which leads back to the Vatican, but we needn't go there. London is close enough, you know. So all the people who have an issue with the BND, you can also sue American Intel and British Intel through this link, through the statement by Gerhard Polly. I have to look it up. So anyway, that guy, okay, we'll find the article. It was on Sputnik News. And I have got it downloaded somewhere, and I'll get the link for court cases. So this is it for me from me today. The announcement is, first of all, that of the murder of my grandparents, the attack on my father, that it's identical to the attack on Melanie's father, the fact that my mother was knocked out and she had her head smashed on the 15th of January, and that I almost was made to fall down the stairs by having my knees give way. And there's also a very interesting little detail, because at some point in 2016, my father started complaining about this odd thing that suddenly when he was walking down the stairs, his knees would give way. And he's a very fit guy, you know. And at the time I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, it's really interesting. It's like your muscles suddenly relax. Yeah, well, that can be done very easily with a chip in your knee, you know. Very, very easily, because you just have to send the electrical signal for bend your knee, you know, to your knee, and your knee will bend, as in, you know, it will feel like your knees are giving way, but in actual fact, you're just bending your knee, you know, and that's exactly what was pulled on me just a few weeks ago. And the fact that I didn't break my neck is just pure chance. And the fact that my laptop that I'm using now to talk to you wasn't damaged is also a little miracle. I had also, I think, measuring devices in, I think, the value of 2,000 euros. So I was carrying equipment in the value of roughly 3,000 euros in that suitcase. And the fact that everything stayed intact was a total miracle that I think was one in the eye of Intel, you know. But there we are. So I am experiencing severe attacks, and oh gosh, I almost forgot, right? Because when I'm saying all this, I mean, I should be fair to these people, right? I would like to show their mugs. So the head of MI6 is Alex Younger, who is responsible for my attacks here, because there's a direct link to British Intel. The head of MI5 is Andrew Parker, and you just saw an image of him, you know. And but I think it's very, very important that, you know, we keep these people in mind, and we know what they look like. Now, the head of the BND is Dr. Bruno Karl, and those who are new to this, okay, you have to find these people, you have to find the images and put their frickin' mugs in your court case, okay? And then the head of Swiss Intel used to be Marco Seiler. So for most of my targeting, it's this guy's mug. But now it's a guy called Dr. Paul Zinecker. Okay, so let me share my screen so that everybody who is being attacked in Britain, Germany, or Switzerland knows exactly what these fuckers look like. That's the head of Swiss Intel. This is Markus Seiler. Okay, look at the seal ring. One of the old Swiss families, hey? Probably going back to the Knights Templar. So he is responsible for my mutilation and the murder attempts within the Swiss national boundaries. He is responsible for the assassination attempt on me 3 days after my first High Court hearing. This is Dr. Bruno Karl. He is responsible for the mutilation and the attacks on me and my family in Germany. He is responsible for the murder of my grandparents and for the attempted murder of my father and my mother just this year. Okay, and he's responsible for the assassination attempts on the German motorway that I keep surviving. Then this is Andrew Parker. He's responsible for the attacks on me spectacularly straight after the first court hearing I had in the London High Court, where I collapsed in pain because of shots to the head. And then I collapsed in pain again because of shots to the head in front of my husband. Okay, so that's responsible for that is Andrew Parker. Now, the responsible for the entire fucking Muppet Show is Alex Younger. Sorry, that's the Black Peter card because he's the head of MI6. And one of his predecessors, Sir John Scarlett, and let's get that guy's mug on in as well, Sir John Scarlett, because he's involved in my targeting as well. That's this dude. So Sir John Scarlett was the head of MI6, okay, and went to Magdalen College, Oxford, at the same time as Lord Sumption. Lord Sumption, now a Supreme Court judge, Lord Sumption. Lord Sumption stalked me in Oxford, okay? Lord Sumption stalked me in Oxford. He stalked me in London, but also in Oxford, okay? You can find lots and lots and lots about this guy. He's a Supreme Court judge and a high-flying barrister and was a contemporary as an undergraduate, right, as Sir John Scarlett, head of MI6 later. So if there's any question about how this dude comes to stalk me in Oxford and then spectacularly 50 meters from my home in Munich, I think the answer is obvious, isn't it? Anyway, I shall put the connection, to a judge next time I stand up before one, because I think these men are dangerous. I also think that they are highly damaged by the MI5, what I call the MI5 brain and buttfuck program, for this is what it is. Okay, I think there's reason to believe that they both went through it. They are both highly damaged and are both highly dangerous. That's Lord Sumption and Sir John Scarlett. So all of this explains, I think, why I'm being attacked, why my family's being attacked, okay? And I say all that to leave a public record that you can download, and I ask you to download it right now, okay? And I will even show you how to download it, because I want you to be able to do it right now as we speak. Open a tab, and then you type clipconverter.cc, and you take the video URL and you paste it in here, and then you click go, and then you download the video that I've just made, okay? And then you back it up, and you burn it on CD, okay? And then you say, this is the victim testimony under oath by Dr. Katherine Horton on the day her father was almost murdered, in exactly the same way as Melanie Richard's father, okay? And this is what you need to know. This is a pretty important announcement, and everybody who had a parent or a sibling or family member murdered by Intel can quote this, because the murder of family members seems to be part of the course. It seems to be part of the program. And the reason why it's part of it is also because generational targeting is part of it. Okay, just today I had an interview with Wednesday Kennedy in Sydney, whose mother was kidnapped by the Holy Spirit care home in Croydon, I think, or Sydney. I don't know. Croydon is probably part of Sydney, is it not? Is it a part of town like in London? I don't know. Sorry, my geography is shit. But anyway, we'll find that care home because we shall write to them. And one of the things that becomes very clear in Wednesday Kennedy's case is that this is generational. Generational targeting is normal. Once you get onto these Masonic, Vatican blacklists, your entire family, your entire gene pool is on it, okay? They will start attacking everybody, your parents, your siblings, your children, your relatives, your friends, your dog, everybody, okay? And I want you to be able to quote this, because for a very, very long time, people were actively silenced. The silencing of victims was the first step in any sort of mind control program. Okay. And there's no more silence. There's absolutely none. Okay. By the way, in case you wonder what this, plaster is, it's not from a satanic ritual. It was me cutting myself on really thick alu that I had to put up on the sides of my bunker because, the attacks are getting more and more severe. I'm being machine gunned literally to death. Okay. And I can't sleep without having continuous headshots. So I had to reinforce the entire bunker, and I'll do some more reinforcing tonight. But this is the situation. Okay. So I want to finish here. There's much, much, much more that I can and I will reveal, and we will bring this entire crime edifice down. I swear we'll bring it down, and we'll bring it down in 2018. Okay. And it doesn't matter what they do to us, how many of us they kill. It really doesn't matter, because we're now accelerating people. Okay. So this is the note from me today. It's about the murder of family members. Okay. It's about induced heart attacks and these sort of things that are highly timed, and hopefully next week, or ideally even this week, I'll start putting out information about how to make your court bundle, how to make your website, how to put together evidence, how to find the fucking neighbors who are Nazis. Okay. And all this is coming. And to all of you who are suffering, help is not just on its way, it's on its way fast. Okay. And every day there's more and more and more people coming forward. And every day there's more and more arrests. So spread this video if you want to stay in the loop. I also ask you now this year, because I need the money, I need support for the court cases, subscribe on Patreon. Okay, become a patron. That's www.patreon.com/stop007. Okay, you can find me there, become a patron, support me with a small monthly sum, and then I'll do my absolute best and I'll keep uploading my videos there. So thank you for listening. Many, many more announcements coming. Okay, some more on Thursday, this Thursday on Techno Forum, but I just had to get this out. So, murder of family members, ravens, don't forget the ravens, the animal steering, and heart attacks and all that. Okay, thank you for listening, and stay safe. If you're not safe, don't despair. Just tweet it. Just put it on YouTube. Just blast it into every last corner of the earth, okay? And always name the guilty ones. The people who are guilty, in my case, I have shown them. These are the heads of Intel, okay? Those are the ones who are guilty. And that Supreme Court judge, he was involved as well. Okay, so we focus on the perpetrators and we move on. So everybody have a good day or good night, as the case may be, and talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. And please, please back up this video. Back it up now. Bye for now, and more on Thursday.